Hi guys, this is Shakira from Shakira's Creative Corner. Today we are going to do a hopefully just a 10-minute video on this book. The Body Keeps the Score. This book, as I just showed you, is about trauma, and what it does, it talks about trauma from a research perspective and how it affects the mind, the body, and we are already made of three parts as a human being: the mind, the body, and the soul. So it talks, it's not a Christian book, so it's not coming from a Christian perspective, it's coming from a research and science perspective, and also it gives accounts about how some of the clientele that this particular researcher, the author of the book, his last name is Kolk. He's a doctor in the field of psychology. Kolk is how you spell that last name. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but how you spell it is K, so Kolk or something like that. I'm probably butchering it. But just back to the book. A lot of people may not realize that if they had some kind of childhood trauma, um, it does affect your mind, your body, and ultimately your soul as well. The issues that come about with experiencing some kind of childhood trauma, even teenage trauma, young adulthood trauma, or even adult trauma can affect you for a long time after that traumatic event has happened. A lot of people associate PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, with military soldiers or veterans, but of course, now today we know that PTSD can be associated with any form of severe trauma. There's more mild cases, and then there's severe cases. Mild cases can still, to the person, it may be diagnosed as mild, but when they experience the symptoms of the PTSD, to them it can feel very severe when these issues are happening. If they have nightmares, if they have flashbacks, if they have real bad spouts of anxiety when they are triggered by something, depending on what the trauma was. It can be a smell, it can be a sound, it could be seeing something that puts them back in when that traumatic event occurred. So all through the book, it talks about all these things and how for every person who has experienced a traumatic event or some form of trauma, it affects us all in different ways. Some people are able to go on after a mild, let's say mild traumatic event, and still function and do very well. There are others, whether it happened in childhood, adulthood, or teenage years, or a young adult, whenever it happened, there are people that are not able to go on and fully function and be quote unquote, I'm gonna put quotation marks, because normal depends on a person. My normal and your normal is two different things. What's normal for me may not be normal for you. That's gonna depend on whatever I've experienced, whether it be trauma or not, and what you've experienced, and which how you function on a daily basis after whatever you have experienced. I personally enjoyed the book. I enjoyed that it took they had a lot of excerpts from the therapy. Not they. When I say they, he incorporated other researchers in the book, and the clients that they serve, and what some of the other researchers' clients experience. That's why if I use the word they, is one author writing a book, but he gave an account of other researchers and his background, his early years of doing research, what he found when he collaborated with other researchers. He gave the account of what he found with their research, and ultimately what has got us from the earliest DSM diagnostic statistical manual of disorders, what got us from the first one all the way up to DSM-5, and now it's DSM-5 TR. So it's got some revisions in there as far as the manual that is used to diagnose mental health issues. Now in the book he doesn't just talk about PTSD. He talks about post traumatic stress disorder and other disorders that can be connected or related to the diagnosis of bipolar, anxiety, whatever your mental health issue is. But the main focus is trauma. Another thing that the book kind of that that is real intricate about the book is for a person who's had some kind of trauma, there are some sensitive topics in the book. When it gets to the childhood trauma, he gives some example of people who had childhood trauma such as sexual trauma, incest, sexual being incest, or whatever has um occurred with that child, and what they're dealing with as a full grown adult. He talks about that. So if you are someone who has had a trauma and you're sensitive to someone giving a real hardcore excerpt about what they went through and how that affects them, be really careful with that. I have background with that myself, so it was a little hard to read those chapters, but it was also really good because it kind of gives you insight as to that you're not alone, and that also there are other people who deal with the same thing and may have similar issues like you. So it helps you to identify with what is going on with you. Even if you are in therapy or have been in therapy, it kind of allows you to see that other people have similar stories like you and experience similar things. And even if it's not sexual, there are people who have been physically abused as a child, also domestic violence victims, adults who have experienced sexual assault as full grown adults. It gives an account of a woman who was very active in what's the word I don't want to say martial arts, but she was very, I guess I would say martial arts. It was that type of um physical exercise or being able to defend yourself. And even though she was knew all those things, she still had a traumatic event where someone tried to harm her in a sexual way. And he talked about that. He talked about how her mindset changed because she felt like she was well equipped to be able to fight off an assailant or a perpetrator, but she had issues. She struggled to be able to fight them off. So I share that story with you because um it's very important to know that these things can happen at any age, sexual, physical, if you're a domestic violence survivor, and that's male or female. Um, and also any kind of trauma like natural disaster type traumas that people experience. I think the book also gives insight that it's lifelong. A lot of people would say, you heal and you're over it. I don't reading the book, I don't believe that's true. I believe you heal to a point where you can function on a daily basis. The issues may not be as extreme as they were once you do get therapy or some kind of outlet or peaceful techniques, martial arts, things like that, or just being grounded every day, meditation, yoga, whatever you use to cope. You can get to a point where they're not as extreme, but I think trauma, and I know trauma leaves a scar that cannot be erased. For everybody, it's different, and everybody's at a different point with their trauma and what they have experienced. I also feel that the book allows people to see that trauma is not a one and done type of thing. Trauma happens to us and it leaves a scar. All of us, I don't want to say all. When I say all, I mean all of those who have experienced a type of trauma. It hits everybody differently. You find people up in age of an older generation who have experienced forms of trauma throughout the course of their life, and they still struggle with these traumas. So treat people kind. You never know what people are going through. People are very sensitive because of the trauma that they have experienced. And people have multiple years of trauma. Some people, it didn't just stay in childhood. They have had multiple experience with traumatic events over the course of their life. Everybody's at a different stage. Everybody's at a different place. If you're looking for a book to educate you on what trauma is, how it affects the mind, body, and ultimately the soul, this would be a great book. I hope I did a great job talking about the book. If you're looking for something to educate you as a mental health professional, it's a great book for that as well. I leave you with this. Whether you have a client or you are someone who has experienced trauma, we all want to live whatever our normal is. So be an advocate for individuals who have experienced trauma. Be sensitive to those who are sensitive to their triggers. Triggers are real and people are sensitive to what they've experienced. Be an advocate, try to be understanding. If you can't, be honest about that. I don't know much about what you're going through. I'm trying to be sensitive. Can you help me to understand? Some people don't know how to identify their triggers. They are experiencing them and they may not even know how to identify what's happening. But be sensitive. As a world at large, we have went through a lot over the past 4 years, and everybody is at a different place with the issues that have happened in their lives, especially grief. So be careful how you treat people. I hope you will take a look at this book. It's pretty thick. I've taken it kind of piece by piece. I hope you enjoy it. This is it for this video. Shakira's Creative Corner. Like, you can comment, but they'll be reviewed. And please share. Have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.